You're listening to The Signal Report, weekly AI music news for Suno creators and indie artists. Every week, we cover the stories shaping the AI music landscape, from platform policy and copyright battles to tools, trends, and what it all means for independent artists building careers right now. Let's get into this week's news. July has started off fiery hot when it comes to AI news. We'll start with our first story for this week. The BBC has published its first official policy on how it will approach AI-generated music as a broadcaster. BBC Director of Music Lorna Clark said the network will prioritize music built on what she described as meaningful human creativity. Artists who use AI tools as part of their creative process will still be considered for BBC programming, but artists and labels will be expected to disclose how AI was used in any tracks submitted to the broadcaster. Clark acknowledged that the policy currently depends on an industry-wide labeling standard that did not yet exist at the time of publication, a gap that the RIAA and IFPI's two-tier badge proposal, announced just days later, begins to address. The BBC's stance makes it one of the first major public broadcasters to put a formal framework around AI music in writing.
New signal. Incoming.
The RIAA and IFPI, joined by the Recording Academy, SAG-AFTRA, and several independent label bodies, unveiled a proposal this week for a standardized AI music labeling system across streaming platforms. Under the plan, tracks generated entirely or primarily by AI would receive a bold, all-capital AI badge. Tracks that are human-led but incorporated AI tools for select elements would receive a smaller, lowercase AI badge, a distinction that recognizes AI as part of a human creative process rather than the sole author of it. Whether major streaming services will adopt the shared badges is still an open question. None have publicly committed to the system yet, and several platforms, including TIDAL, have already begun rolling out their own independent AI labeling policies. The proposal represents the first coordinated industry-wide attempt to create a common standard for how AI involvement in music is disclosed to listeners.
New signal. Incoming.
CVC Capital Partners has agreed to acquire a controlling interest in DistroKid, one of the largest independent music distribution platforms in the world. DistroKid handles a significant share of new music uploads to major streaming services globally, making it a central piece of infrastructure for both traditional indie artists and AI-generated music releases. Longtime backer Insight Partners will retain a minority stake in the company under the new ownership structure. The deal is expected to close in the third quarter of 2026. The acquisition brings one of the music industry's most important upload pipelines under new private equity ownership at a moment when institutional capital is moving aggressively into music-adjacent infrastructure and distribution technology.
New signal. Incoming.
Suno introduced a new initiative called Spark, an incubator program offering cash grants, marketing support, and writing camp access to unsigned musicians who create music on the platform. The announcement drew attention not only for the program itself, but for the terms attached to it. Reporting from Music Business Worldwide indicated that Spark's agreement bars participating artists from publicly criticizing Suno, both during the program and after it ends, with no expiration on that restriction. The launch also coincided with renewed public backlash against the company over its training data practices, including a public statement from artist SZA. Suno has not publicly addressed the criticism clause specifically. The Spark program remains open for applications.
New signal. Incoming.
Spotify's co-CEO publicly defended the company's approach to AI music this week, positioning it as a deliberate alternative to tools like Suno and Udio. Spotify is developing an AI music remix feature for premium subscribers built on a licensing agreement with Universal Music Group. The feature will allow users to generate covers and remixes of participating UMG artist songs, with rights holders receiving a share of the resulting revenue. Specific pricing and a launch date have not yet been announced. The argument Spotify is making is that a licensed, consent-based model, where artists and labels have agreed to participate and receive payment, is meaningfully different from open-ended AI generation tools that are currently the subject of active copyright litigation.
New signal. Incoming.
Suno is facing another copyright infringement claim, this one from Belgium-based music licensing company Jamendo. Jamendo, which operates a catalog of tracks licensed for commercial use, alleges that its music was used without authorization to train Suno's AI model. The lawsuit was filed on June 29th. Jamendo's parent company, the Winamp Group, had filed similar claims against NVIDIA the week prior. Suno, currently valued at $5.4 billion, declined to comment on the new filing. The company continues to argue that its training practices fall within the bounds of fair use, the same legal position it holds in its ongoing litigation with Universal Music Group and Sony Music Entertainment.
New signal. Incoming.
A new performance study tracking AI-generated music acts across Spotify and YouTube found that several synthetic artists have accumulated tens of millions of streams. One breakout track from an AI-generated artist was estimated to have generated more than $600,000 in combined platform revenue. The findings suggest that AI music has moved beyond its early novelty phase into commercially viable territory by conventional streaming metrics. The report arrives at a moment of significant legal uncertainty. Major record labels are currently pursuing copyright litigation against companies behind the AI models powering these tools, and the outcome of those cases could affect how AI-generated music is produced, distributed, and monetized going forward.
New signal. Incoming.
A broad coalition of Australian music organizations delivered a formal open letter to the country's federal government this week, calling for enforceable regulations on the use of copyrighted music in AI training datasets. The coalition includes APRA, AMCOS, RIAA, and more than a dozen additional music industry bodies. In their letter, the groups describe the current situation as the largest intellectual property theft in the music industry's history. The push was directly tied to reporting from The Atlantic, which found that millions of tracks from Australian and New Zealand artists had appeared in AI training datasets without the knowledge or compensation of the songwriters involved. The coalition is asking Parliament to establish legal frameworks requiring AI developers to obtain proper licenses before using copyrighted recordings for training purposes.
New signal. Incoming.
Swedish house producer John Dahlbäck, known for early collaborations with Avicii, Cascade, and Benny Benassi, shared his perspective on AI music tools in an interview with Music Radar earlier this week. Dahlbäck said he has gone from being wary of AI to what he described as a firm believer in using it as part of his process, specifically for vocal experiments and for sketching new ideas, in the same way he might explore a new synth patch to find creative direction. He drew a clear line, however, at the other end of the spectrum. Dahlbäck said he loses interest the moment AI is used to generate a finished song with no craft or human decision-making behind it. His comments reflect a position shared by a growing number of working producers, that the value of AI tools depends entirely on how intentionally they are used.
New signal. Incoming.
TIDAL has announced a new policy taking effect on July 15th. Tracks identified as 100% AI generated will be tagged with an AI badge and cut off from royalty payments and direct-to-fan sales on the platform. Additionally, AI music that impersonates existing human artists will be removed from the service entirely. TIDAL framed the policy around protecting what it calls organic creativity, making it one of the first major streaming platforms to draw an explicit public line between fully AI-generated content and music made by human artists who use AI as part of their process. Under the new rules, the latter category, human-led, AI-assisted music, remains eligible for standard royalties on TIDAL.
New signal. Incoming.
Suno is looking into offering an official self-serve developer API, which would be the first of its kind from the company. Suno's chief product officer announced the exploration publicly, describing it as part of a broader move toward what the company is calling a partner-powered model. Developers interested in early access are being invited to apply before any formal building begins. The announcement came shortly after Suno closed a Series D funding round that valued the company above $5.4 billion. Until now, third-party developers who wanted to build tools on top of Suno's platform have had to rely on unofficial API wrappers. An official channel would open the door for a wider range of applications built directly on Suno's AI music generation capabilities. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Signal Report. If any of these stories hit close to home, be sure to share the episode with a fellow creator. The more indie artists stay informed, the better we all navigate what's coming. New episode drops every week. Find SynRize on all streaming platforms, and be sure to get your AI music and creator updates during the week directly at synrizemusic.com, link in the video description below. We'll see you next week on the Signal Report.